13. Boastful driver busts his own windshield. During a motor rally in Key West, Florida in July 2018, a Lamborghini owner decided to show off his $300,000 Aventador to onlookers. He exited the car and stepped on top of the windshield, only to discover the hard way that Lamborghini windshields apparently crack very easily. The glass broke instantly under the man's weight, but he didn't seem to mind. Perhaps he was trying to save face, but he continued posing for several moments before getting back into the car and driving away. A woman riding in the car's passenger seat seemed noticeably upset about the damaged windshield, and one can only imagine that the ensuing conversation between the pair was anything but pleasant. 12. Ferrari race ends in fiery crash. The foolish decision to street race one afternoon in 2023 ended in disaster for two Ferrari owners who were vacationing in Osimo, Italy. The Belgian nationals, aged 50 and 54, both lost control of their car and proceeded to fly off a curb. Their Ferraris became airborne and crashed into the fence of a nearby home at the exact same time. While the men were lucky enough to walk away with only minor injuries, the vehicles experienced a much different fate. One of the Ferraris burst into flames, and the vacationers likely didn't enjoy having to pay for the damages to the cars and the home. Not to mention any medical bills they accrued after the collisions. 11. Gun-toting grandma versus armed intruder. 74-year-old Rebby Robertson was at home watching TV in Bowie County, Texas on New Year's Day in 2017 when an armed intruder entered her home. Luckily though, the senior citizen's .38 caliber pistol was within arm's reach. She grabbed the gun off a nearby table and pointed it at the would-be robber, who took off running. Robertson chased after the man while opening fire in his direction, leaving her wall riddled with bullet holes. The suspect fled the scene, and it was unclear whether he was shot. Speaking with local station KSLA, Robertson openly admitted that she tried to kill the intruder, and she said that she'd do the same if anyone else tried to break into her house. Considering that the incident happened in Texas, police didn't seem to have a problem with the elderly woman's way of handling the situation, which could have had a much worse outcome for both parties. When the story broke, the suspect was still at large, and it's still unclear whether he was identified or captured. 10. Racist Rambler gets right hooked. An ignorant strap hanger paid a painful price for his behavior after deciding that the London Underground was an appropriate place to vocalize his racist beliefs one day in 2020. As he rambled incoherently on the train, an onlooker pulled out their phone and hit the record button. Footage showed the raging passenger screaming at someone out of the camera's view and demanding to know the person's name before commenting on their skin color. The woman filming the encounter asked the man about the relevance of the person's skin tone, and he turned his rage toward her, telling her to shut up. In addition to violating the COVID mask mandate that was in place at the time, the irate subway rider was plain old rude. He continued targeting innocent bystanders with derogatory racial comments, including a group of black passengers whom he referred to as pets. One of the group members turned around and delivered a much-deserved right hook to the man's face, and he immediately flew backward across the train car before falling on the floor and being knocked unconscious. One person ran to the man's aid, while a woman could be heard laughing and saying not to help a racist. The outcome of the situation is unclear, but it's likely safe to assume that the man learned a lesson or two about running his mouth. 9. Tables turned for Tennessee thief. A Tennessee resident was just going about his business one day in 2018 when a longtime acquaintance allegedly tried to rob him at gunpoint. The suspect, later identified by police as DeAndre Nolan, likely wasn't expecting the victim to fight back. But he did, and he managed to wrestle Nolan's gun out of his hands. The victim shot his attacker in the leg and then detained him until the police arrived. News reports didn't clarify whether Nolan was charged with any crimes, but at the very least, he likely learned that it's a terrible idea to rob people violently. 8. Entitled squatters are held accountable. After receiving a 911 hang-up call one day in December 2022, deputies responded to a residence in Kissimmee, Florida, where they encountered a couple who were later identified as Martin Gonzalez Garcia and Asializ Roldan Oscasio. Law enforcement had been searching for the pair, who were suspected of stealing $140 worth of merchandise from a local Dollar General store earlier that day. During the conversation with police, Roldan Oscasio allegedly said that she dialed 911 to ask for help moving the couple's belongings out of the home, where they were squatting illegally. They also planned to ask for a ride to the airport so they could travel to New York State for the weekend. To the suspect's credit, Gonzalez Garcia reportedly admitted to stealing several pairs of earphones, a Bluetooth headset, and a cell phone during the Dollar General robbery. According to police, he said he took the items so he could sell them and make some money. He also allegedly said that he and Roldan Oscasio had broken into the house to get out of the cold for the night. Both suspects were charged with burglary of a residence, while Gonzalez Garcia was hit with additional charges of burglary and theft for the Dollar General robbery. And as you've likely already guessed, they didn't get a ride to the airport. In a Facebook post, the Polk County Sheriff's Office wrote that they were happy to give the couple a lift to the local jail and that they were welcome to stay the entire weekend. 7. Woman wins lottery after paying it forward. Brianna Mills did not expect anything in return when she paid for someone's groceries one afternoon in November 2023. She noticed that the person ahead of her in line at a 7-Eleven store in Virginia was struggling to pay for their items and decided to help out of the kindness of her heart. After covering the fellow customer's bill, she treated herself to a $5 scratch-off ticket, which turned out to be a $150,000 winner. And when she stepped outside, Mills noticed a double rainbow in the sky. She thought it would make the perfect backdrop for a photo of the winning ticket, which she posted on social media while announcing the windfall to her friends and family. Mills didn't say whether she had any specific plans for the money, but she certainly went home feeling like her kindness had helped lead her to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. 6. Angry cyclist takes a spill. 29-year-old Heidi Cooper was accepting a courier delivery outside her home in Yorkshire, England in October 2023 when an Aldi employee approached on a bicycle and asked the delivery person to move out of the way so he could squeeze past. And under his breath, the cyclist muttered something about the delivery man's van being parked illegally. The delivery man fired back with a comment about how it was illegal to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk. By then, the cyclist was riding toward him at full speed in an apparent attempt to scare him. But the gesture failed miserably when the Aldi worker slammed on his brakes to avoid a collision and went flying over the handlebars, hitting his shoulder against Heidi's perimeter wall on the way down. He landed on the pavement and continued talking smack at the delivery driver as he struggled to his feet, saying, "I have more rights than you." At the time, Heidi was so shocked by the cyclist's behavior that she stayed silent, worried that a fight was about to break out and wanting absolutely no part of it. But when she showed surveillance footage of the incident to her partner later on, she got a good laugh out of it and decided to share it on social media. While the delivery man's van was parked illegally, Heidi believed that the cyclist got a well-deserved serving of karma for his attitude. In a TikTok video that quickly garnered over 1 million views, she commended the delivery driver for remaining calm throughout the confrontation. Opinions among commenters varied, with many agreeing with Heidi's assessment that the Aldi employee acted way out of line and that he committed the bigger offense by riding his bike on the sidewalk. Others argued that the delivery driver seemed to think that parking laws didn't apply to him, while expecting the cyclist to respect the rules. 5. Drug dealer's dope delivery lands in the wrong hands. On what began as a normal workday at a restaurant in Auburn, Maine in April 2023, employees opened what they thought was a shipment of mugs and discovered $3 million worth of fentanyl. The plastic tote that the delivery arrived in contained roughly 14 kilos, or 31 pounds of the highly illegal and deadly drug. A staff member contacted the police, who kept an eye on the restaurant to see if anyone came by in search of the illicit package. And sure enough, just an hour after the drugs arrived, a suspect identified by law enforcement as 41-year-old Jeremy Mercier came waltzing into the parking lot in an apparent attempt to retrieve the goods. Mercier, who owns a local motorcycle repair shop, has no connection to the restaurant, according to police, who said that they found a shipping label inside the drug delivery with the suspect's name on it. He was charged with 2 counts of aggravated drug trafficking and 1 count of aggravated importing of drugs. And in case you didn't know, each charge is a felony punishable by a prison sentence of up to 30 years. Records show that Mercier was convicted on a federal cocaine distribution charge in 2007 and served several years in prison. He was allegedly out on bail for an unrelated misdemeanor case during his most recent arrest and is being held at the Androscoggin County Jail on $500,000 bail. In a statement to local station WMTW, the restaurant's owner, Mike Peters, commended his employees for intercepting the fentanyl, especially considering the damage the drug has done to local communities. He also politely asked that people send their drugs somewhere other than his business. 4. Violent predator gets maximum prison time. A young Mississippi woman was out on her regular morning run on June 4, 2021, when a man named Chris Bamberg pulled up in a truck and asked for directions. After the woman gave the information and turned to continue running, Bamberg attacked her from behind and forced her into his truck while repeatedly threatening to kill her. The woman fought back with all her strength, even as Bamberg struck her in the head with his gun. But after spotting duct tape and zip ties in the vehicle, she knew that her attacker had sinister plans for her, and she wasn't about to make it easy for Bamberg to carry out his twisted fantasy. As the assailant tried to zip tie the victim's arms, she bit him repeatedly and was able to escape. She ran home and rushed inside while yelling out to her family for help. The woman's stepfather would later describe how she arrived home covered in so much blood that the only part of her face he could see was the whites of her eyes. Her head was also covered in deep lacerations which required staples. A roll of duct tape was found on the ground nearby, and footage of Bamberg's truck helped investigators identify him as the culprit. The 37-year-old turned himself in the next morning following an all-night manhunt. To the victim's loved ones, there was no doubt that Bamberg intended to kill her. The community was also shaken by the horrific attack, and the authorities were just as determined as anyone to ensure that justice was served. In September 2023, Bamberg pleaded guilty to kidnapping and attempted murder. The judge imposed the maximum sentence of 30 years for the kidnapping charge, plus 33 years for the attempted murder charge, which was calculated specifically to reflect Bamberg's life expectancy. The sentences will run consecutively, putting his projected release date sometime in the year 2086, and ensuring that he'll most likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Throughout the court proceedings, Bamberg's family members said that his violent behavior on the day of the attack didn't reflect the type of person he really was, but they were also apologetic and sympathetic toward the victim, with Bamberg's brother stating that he hoped the sentence would help the woman and her loved ones heal. Bamberg apologized during his sentencing, claiming that he'd found God during the 2 years he spent in custody while the case played out. His attorney, Noah Drake, said that his client pleaded guilty to avoid putting the victim through any more suffering, and that Bamberg took full responsibility for his actions. Considering the emotional trauma that the woman and her family were left with due to his predatory behavior, it was likely hard to believe that he was being sincere. But the ordeal was finally over, and Bamberg is now in a place where he can no longer harm innocent civilians. 3. Fake war hero gets put on blast. Pretending to be a military member or veteran is considered one of the lowest and most disgraceful forms of disrespect in the United States. Many of these fraudsters are mortified at the mere thought of being publicly called out for their impersonating behavior. but most people would likely agree that they deserve to be put on blast. One of the latest phony war heroes to land themselves in the spotlight is a man named Billy Ray Zinnerman, a self-proclaimed retired sergeant major who claimed that he served for the U.S. Marines during Desert Storm and in Afghanistan. According to Arizona-based news outlet In Maricopa, the ruse dates at least as far back as 2010, when he appeared in a PBS special called The Moral Wounds of War. In reality, Zinnerman only served 3 years in the military before being dishonorably discharged in 1980 for frequent misconduct. But his act was apparently convincing enough for him to weasel his way into several veterans organizations. And in 2022, he was the guest of honor at the 247th Marine Corps Ball. During the event, he allegedly told harrowing tales about things that never happened, including a helicopter crash in Afghanistan and being shot in Kuwait. During his public appearance, Zinnerman donned a bulging array of medals, which are now thought to be imitations that were purchased online. The truth about Zinnerman's military service, or in this case, lack thereof, came out in 2023 after some suspicious veterans did some deep digging and discovered that he'd been lying the entire time. According to an In Maricopa expose, Zinnerman claimed that he retired from the Marine Corps in 2002 after serving several tours of duty overseas. But he was reportedly in the United States during all the periods he claimed to be deployed between 1980 and 2002. Furthermore, records show that by 2002, Zinnerman had been arrested for at least a dozen felonies and had been convicted on 4 of the counts. The plethora of medals that he proudly showed off during public appearances are now believed to be replicas that he purchased online. Fact-checkers confirmed with the National Personnel Records Center that there's no record of Zinnerman serving in the military after his discharge in 1980. And there's also an absence of records to show that he received any of the medals he routinely displayed on his uniform. He's since been accused of forging the documents he used as so-called proof of his service. When confronted by a journalist for In Maricopa about the stolen valor accusations, Zinnerman allegedly claimed that he'd recently had a stroke and was experiencing memory problems. The news outlet further reported that Zinnerman had provided some photos that he said were from his military days. But the man in the pictures was identified as an entirely different person who happens to be a real service member. In 2013, the Stolen Valor Act made it a federal crime to profit, attempt to profit, or to receive benefits from false claims of military service. There are rumors that the FBI is investigating Zinnerman, but the agency has refused to comment on the matter when questioned by reporters. In the meantime, Zinnerman has been kicked out of several veterans organizations and is experiencing the added humiliation of others knowing he's nothing but a big liar. 2. Judge throws the book at racist attacker. In a disturbing hate crime that was captured on camera in 2019, a pair of suspects beat an African-American man in a parking lot in Shawnee, Oklahoma. According to police, Devin Nathaniel Johnson and Brandon Wayne Killian allegedly assaulted Jarek Carolina outside a bar where he was innocently enjoying a drink with a friend. Surveillance footage showed one of the perpetrators hurling a racial slur and yelling, "You're dead," while beating the victims. The attackers continued to beat Carolina even after he fell unconscious, and the victim was unable to immediately speak with detectives after being rushed to the hospital due to the severity of his injuries. Johnson and Killian were apprehended shortly after the assault. Federal authorities charged the suspects with hate crimes, and the men were also hit with state-level charges, including aggravated assault and battery. The unprovoked attack left Carolina with numerous injuries, which he may never fully heal from. While recuperating, he told local station KFOR that he didn't remember the beating, and that he was still getting used to all the unforeseen changes that he'd encountered along his road to recovery. Shortly after the attack, authorities announced that they planned for the case to be resolved quickly. But it dragged its heels through the court system for more than 3 years before Johnson and Killian each pleaded guilty to a hate crime in 2022. In doing so, they admitted that they assaulted Carolina due to his race. Months later, in mid-2023, the judge sentenced Johnson to the 10-year maximum for the charge, followed by 3 years of probation. Johnson also pleaded guilty to state-level charges of malicious intimidation or harassment and aggravated assault and battery. He received a 5-year prison sentence, although it's unclear whether he's serving his terms concurrently or consecutively. Records show that Killian is also serving federal time, with a projected release date in 2028. And as an added consequence, he and Johnson are each responsible for paying roughly $68,000 in restitution. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear even more stories, stay tuned for some extra content that you might have missed. 1. Cheating wife concocts false attack story. When 30-year-old Renee Dawn Skoglund decided to step out on her husband with another man during a visit to Florida in 2023, she apparently wasn't thinking about the potential consequences. After the encounter, she began to worry about the possibility of having contracted an STI. But she didn't want to pay for the testing, so she told the police that someone had attacked her and forced themselves on her, enabling her to access the testing for free. Skoglund filed a bogus police report claiming that she'd run into car problems along Interstate 75 in Hillsborough County. According to her initial version of events, an unknown individual approached her while she sat stranded along the roadside and put a towel over her head. The attacker supposedly forced Skoglund into the back seat of her car and bound her hands and feet with rope before carrying out the assault. Since her face had been covered the entire time, Skoglund was unable to describe what the attacker looked like. But investigators quickly discovered that the entire story was a pile of lies. Footage from a local Walmart store showed Skoglund buying the rope that she claimed was used to tie her up. And surveillance video from other locations also conflicted with the story Skoglund had provided to the police. By the time law enforcement decided to make an arrest, Skoglund had returned to her home in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So she was extradited to Florida to face charges for lying to the police. In a statement, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office accused Skoglund of attempting to change her story several times before she admitted she was lying about the attack. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of making a false police report and was sentenced to 2 years of house arrest and 8 years of probation. The judge also ordered her to repay more than $17,000 in costs that were wasted on resources to investigate the bogus claims.
Number 8. Maxwell Barry. 22-year-old Maxwell Barry had already had 1 alcoholic beverage during a Frontier Airlines flight from Philadelphia to Miami earlier this year when he asked a flight attendant for another. He allegedly rubbed his empty cup against her backside, and she replied by telling Barry not to touch her. After spilling his new drink on his shirt, Barry went to the restroom and emerged shirtless. Another flight attendant had to help him get another shirt out of his carry-on. But his behavior became increasingly disruptive. He groped 2 flight attendants and then sucker-punched another who was trying to get him under control. Crew members held Barry down and strapped him into his seat with duct tape while he screamed for help and said that his parents are worth $2 million. Then they put tape over his mouth. Viral footage of the ordeal shows Barry trying to free himself. He was charged with 3 counts of assault and initially claimed on social media that he had done nothing wrong and what happened on the flight was the most dehumanizing experience of his life. Barry changed his tune toward the end of his trial when he pleaded guilty to all charges. He received a 60-day jail sentence followed by a year of probation. Number 7. Joe Satell. In 2017, a resident in Kingsport, Tennessee, opened her door to a home invasion one day after hearing a knock and assuming it was a harmless visitor. When she looked through the peephole, she saw a woman holding a flyer, but when she opened the door, she came face to face with a masked intruder who grabbed her and tried pulling her outside. The 52-year-old homeowner managed to break free and went inside her home, but was followed by the man who announced that he was there to commit a robbery. During a struggle between the two, the resident pulled the attacker's face mask off and was shocked to realize that she was being victimized by a longtime family friend, Joe Satell. She was also surprised to see he was carrying a handgun in his waistband, but she was not about to let him get away with what he was trying to do. Wasting no time, the woman grabbed a nearby baseball bat and continued to fight Satell, with help from two teens who were also inside the home when the intrusion occurred. The trio managed to shove the suspect out the front door, and he tried to flee to a getaway vehicle driven by the woman who had initially approached with a flyer in her hand, who was later identified as Satell's girlfriend. When she realized that he couldn't get away, she hit the gas and fled the scene. Satell eventually broke free on foot, but his escape didn't last long. He ran into the home of a nearby resident, and they were able to hold him until police arrived. He was charged with aggravated burglary and aggravated robbery. Number 6. Gas thief goes up in flames. In what can only be described as an uncanny dose of instant karma, a Utah man recently caught fire while siphoning gas from a truck's tank. Surveillance footage shows the moment the thief caught fire after crawling beneath the vehicle he was trying to steal fuel from. The incident happened outside of a business called Summit Fire and Protection. Afterward, branch manager Travis Mills told local station KSL-TV that some people try to take the easy way out of everything. He was alerted to the theft shortly before the truck became fully engulfed in flames. Mills explained that when the culprit failed to siphon the gas the old-fashioned way, he drilled a hole in the tank, and that's how the fire started. These types of robberies are reportedly on the rise as gas prices in the US hit all-time highs. In fact, the attempted robbery was caught on camera thanks to a $30,000 surveillance system that Mills had just installed on the property, due to the increase in gas thefts. Shortly before the theft that was captured by the new system, someone stole the truck's catalytic converter and siphoned gasoline from the tank. The footage shows the thief maneuvering beneath the truck and then jumping and trying to put out the flames on his shirt. In accordance with the basic rules of fire safety that we all learn in elementary school, he can then be seen stopping, dropping, and rolling before being helped into a getaway vehicle by an accomplice. It's unclear if he was injured, and if so, how severe his injuries were. The thieves remain at large. Number 5. Arian Tahar. In an alarming case of someone successfully impersonating law enforcement at one of the highest possible levels, Arian Tahar and a co-conspirator named Haider Sher Ali allegedly managed to convince some members of the Secret Service that they were federal agents. The scam allegedly began in 2020 when the pair started living rent-free in a luxury apartment building in Washington, D.C., where they convinced staff at the building that they worked for the government. It wasn't too surprising, since many federal employees do live there, but in a shocking twist, the suspects also persuaded the building's manager to give them access to surveillance video and residential records. They were finally caught and charged earlier this year. During a raid of the duo's ill-gotten apartment, police found a stash of weapons. Court documents also revealed that witnesses saw Taharzadeh and Sher Ali logging into what seemed to be legitimate web portals for government workers. At around the same time federal employees began carrying Glock handguns, the pair also suddenly had them. So it's no wonder that people fell for their scheme, which, by all appearances, seemed valid. It's unclear who funded the suspect's outwardly lavish lifestyle, and investigation is ongoing. 4 members of First Lady Jill Biden's security team were placed on leave as detectives try to figure out how the suspects pulled the scam off with such accuracy. Taharzadeh reportedly tried to lay the bulk of the blame on Sher Ali, but he's not innocent either, according to a former friend and business partner that he started a now defunct security company with in Kansas City. Speaking with the Daily Beast, the anonymous ex-colleague described Taharzadeh's current brush with the law as karma, adding that he got burned numerous times before he decided to finally walk away and avoid any future business dealings with the man. When asked about what he thinks the suspect's end game was, he said, "Part of me wants to tell you, it's because he could." Number 4. Joseph McKinnon. A South Carolina man had just murdered his partner and was in the middle of burying her remains earlier this year when he suddenly collapsed. Residents called the Edgefield County Sheriff's Office in May and reported seeing a man lying on the ground unconscious in the town of Trenton. Responding deputies found Joseph Anthony McKinnon dead in the yard of a home. While investigating the scene, they discovered the body of his girlfriend, 65-year-old Patricia Ruth Dent, wrapped in garbage bags and placed in a freshly dug hole. Neighbors told law enforcement that they had seen McKinnon digging the hole the day before, and an autopsy determined that he had died from a heart attack. An autopsy of Dent's remains concluded that she had been strangled to death. Based on the evidence at the scene, it appeared as though McKinnon was almost finished filling Dent's grave when he set the shovel down and walked away. He then fell to the ground and never regained consciousness. Number 3. Ja Cure. Back in 1999, Jamaican singer Cicature Alcock, better known as Ja Cure, was sentenced to 15 years in prison for aggravated robbery, illegal possession of a firearm, and a brutal assault of a 19-year-old woman. He was paroled in 2007 after serving only 8 years and went on to enjoy continued success as a musician, while those affected by his actions were left feeling like the justice system had failed them. Ja Cure managed to stay out of trouble until November of 2021. Then he was arrested in Amsterdam for stabbing music promoter Ricardo Blake in the stomach. The pair were in the middle of an argument when the assault occurred in the city center, right in front of the public. Despite his injuries, Blake made it to a nearby police station where he reported the disturbing attack. He was then taken to a hospital where he underwent surgery for his wounds. Police wasted no time arresting Alcock, who was ordered held without bail after his arraignment. In the meantime, detectives carried out an investigation into the matter and ultimately slapped the suspect with charges of attempted murder, attempted manslaughter, and aggravated assault. A court dropped the attempted murder charge, but found Alcock guilty of attempted manslaughter earlier this year and sentenced him to 6 years in prison, which isn't a bad deal, considering the fact that he was facing up to 15 years. And while the outcome could have been much more heavy-handed, it begs the question of whether karma finally caught up with Ja Cure for what many feel was a less than adequate sentence for his previous crimes. Either way, those who believe he belongs behind bars can rest easy, as he remains locked up pending his next move in the case. It's unclear whether the singer plans to appeal his sentence. Number 2. Jeff Case. With inflation hitting its highest in decades and basic living costs skyrocketing, many people are struggling by no fault of their own to afford even the most simple expenses. A Coast Guard veteran named Jeff Case is helping to pay it forward through the Good Karma Garage in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he fixes vehicles for people who are hitting hard times free of charge. Speaking with local station Fox 43, he explained that he thought of the idea when a customer who's in her 70s couldn't afford the costs associated with getting her car up to inspection standards. Her bill was estimated at $1,200 at another business, and she just didn't have that kind of money laying around. Case said that he was able to get the parts for a fraction of the cost and that he performed the labor for free, which made it possible for the woman to get the necessary work done on her car. This was important because not only did it enable her to pass inspection, but because it ensured that her vehicle is roadworthy and therefore safe. After performing the good deed, Case realized that a lot of people are in a similar predicament and he wanted to continue giving back. So he started the Good Karma Garage as a way to help out veterans and community members in need. The customers he helps out pay nothing to get their vehicles repaired, and Case's kindness has gone a long way in helping them get on their feet. One man he helped was a homeless veteran who moved to the area to be closer to his family. Case and his team got the man's car running and eventually helped him get a new car. Having access to reliable transportation enabled him to get a higher-paying job and to become more involved in his kids' lives, which may not have been possible otherwise. This is exactly the kind of difference Case wanted to make. He told Fox 43 that each and every one of his customers so far have been deserving and inspiring. As of late February of this year, his team had helped 14 customers and had provided more than $4,000 worth of parts that would have come at a hefty price tag at a traditional repair garage. Number 1. Harmony Montgomery. Sometime in late 2019, a little girl from New Hampshire named Harmony Montgomery vanished seemingly without a trace. Authorities don't know exactly when she disappeared because they were unaware of her disappearance until the fall of 2021, when her biological mother, Crystal Sorey, reported her missing. As soon as the news broke, hundreds of tips poured in, and police offered a $150,000 reward for information leading to Harmony's whereabouts. But she still hasn't been found. Shortly before she disappeared, her father Adam, his wife Kayla, the couple's 2 children in common, and Harmony were evicted from their apartment. Witnesses reported seeing the entire family together, but within days, they stopped seeing Harmony and only saw Adam and Kayla with the girls' half-siblings. At the time, they were homeless and living out of their 2 vehicles. Harmony's short life has been a difficult one. She was repeatedly removed from the custody of her mother, Crystal Sorey, due to alleged substance abuse issues, and was ultimately placed in Adam's care. Sadly, based on the circumstances surrounding Harmony's disappearance, it seems as though life with her father wasn't any better. Adam reportedly told police that Harmony had been living with Sorey since 2019, but this was quickly proven to be untrue. Her stepmother, Kayla, has been arrested at least 3 times throughout the investigation, including failing to remove Harmony from her food stamp account after she went missing. Kayla has also been charged with receiving stolen property in connection with a firearms theft that Adam allegedly committed. He has also been indicted on several criminal offenses. In her most recent arrest, Kayla was accused of committing perjury by lying to a grand jury. Speaking with local station WMUR, Crystal Sorey stated that karma is real, in reference to the investigators' slow but promising developments. Simply put, she's confident that the system will do its due diligence and bring the people who are responsible for Harmony's disappearance to justice.
Would you be more satisfied to learn that your unfaithful ex's new partner was cheating on them? Or to receive a promotion after a jealous work rival went out of their way to try making you look bad to your boss? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!